Okay, welcome to another video. This time we're going to do some JavaScript. I've had a lot of people asking questions about promises and import and export. So we're going to talk about those two things really, promises and then import and export. We'll start with import and export because I think that one is a little bit more straightforward and quick. So let's jump right back into our chore list app. If you remember this pretty ugly, unstyled chore list that we have. And yeah, let's look at some of our imports and exports here, and the various ways that we can do it. So as you see here, we do have a way that we're importing and a way that we're exporting. You'll notice that our imports, we use the import and then the squiggy from, okay? And that's because the exports here are named. So for example, this chore list, export function chore list, we import it over here as chore list with the squiggies around it. And then if we look at some of the others, I don't know that we have, yeah, so everything is mostly named here. Now, there's some other ways that we can do this. So let's look at this app, for example. Import squiggy app from app. And again, that's because it's named. So if we look at here, export function app. Now, if we did export default, you can't do export default function app, I don't think. I think it's going to throw fit. You see it breaks here because you can't have both of those things. You have to export default function. Default's kind of the name. So it loses its name, export default function, but then when we go into here, here, we can't have those squiggies around it anymore. So this is a default export and import. And so this is useful. In this case, it works fine because we only have one thing that we're exporting here, right? Just the app. And so having it just be this one thing. Now, for example, in like the React DOM client, that's like a library. And so we have create root, and probably a bunch of other things that we might want to import. And so it might not make sense to have a default, there. Now you can have a default and named as well. That is a little bit weird. I've done it before, but to me, usually you do a default if there's only one thing, like an app, and then named if there's multiple. So let's go into chore list now. So in app, and you see chore list, what do we export here? It's really just that one thing. So we could go in here and do export default and get rid of just the name there and save that, and then go back into here. And remember, we have to take away these squiggies for the default. Okay. And there, we've refactored it to kind of be more just a little bit more maybe structured or clean, because we always know that there's not going to be anything else in these apps. Like it's a chore list, it's a component, it's a chore list, it's the app. That's all we're getting. Now, if we look at this JSON storage library We could call it a library. It has multiple functions, and so if we go in here, we want to come in here and do a default. Now, you could do like a default, like export default, and then like return them this way, you know, get JSON. But that's just messy, and you know, that's one more object that you have to go through to get those functions. So in this case, this is a great place to use named exports. Okay, so all of these are nice, but they use a newer syntax. I mean, at this point, it's kind of not that new, but it's definitely newer than this next way that I'm going to show you. But and so you know, import, export, squiggies, all that, right? And the from, okay, this is one way. Now, depending on your target browser and bundler and things like that, you might not be able to use this. I think you probably should. Let's just look these days. I'm gonna sneeze. Excuse me. Can I use? This is a great website. It's becoming less and less needed with the with Internet Explorer dying off, but Safari still has plenty of problems. So if we do import, let's just look in here. Dynamic import, import maps, import. So yeah, it looks like, you know, pretty much everything can use it now. So this next thing I show you might not be important, but it's still good to know. And yeah, so for example, so let's see here. Let's change one of these. So there are a couple different ways to export. Well, so I've shown you one way to import and export. This is kind of one way that you'll use. If you want to adopt it one way, you'll adopt this way. Or you can adopt this other way. You kind of don't see them mixed. So, so yeah, what I'm going to do here is not anything you'll probably ever see, but we're going to do it just to show. So in this case, if we wanted to use the old way, we would do module, exports, and then get JSON storage. Is that right? I think that's right. Equals function, something like this. So let me just go up here and copy this, and I think we should be able to. We just have to refactor some things here, but so this is kind of the old syntax. I'm just going to copy this real quick. Put it down here. So to exports dot equals function. Okay. And then let's just go and comment these out for now. Okay, so this is an older syntax for doing this, and is it just gonna work? Okay, so it can just work that way. I think, let's just make sure. Okay, no, good, that's what I was hoping. So it can't get that, you can't get it using this. So, but we can get it by using this other way. So this is why I'm saying you don't really mix them. So if you do this instead, so do const get JSON set JSON equals require, then let's do JSON storage. Okay, then that knows how to go and get this type of export. So now let's just make sure this works again. Okay, worked, but still doesn't like that. What am I doing wrong? Is it, maybe it's just export. Nope. Is it a module? Exports? No, that's okay. I'm gonna have to. Let's look at something real quick, because I do this in another project quite a bit actually, and I don't remember. Okay, that's not this one. Just 1 second. Let me just see here. Exports.register. Yeah, so that should be fine. Exports. That's what I thought. Oh. Well, duh. Okay. I don't have a set, right? These are both gets. Okay. There we go. That should be better. Okay, testing. So, that's how you do this in this old way. Exports dot and then your name of your thing. It could be a function. It could be a constant. It could be whatever, right? Okay, and so then let's just see. I think this will still not work. I don't think you can just like. I mean, I'm sure you can mix and match, but I think that it. Okay, yeah, so that works. But like it said, usually you use one or the other and not, just to stay sane. You saw in that other project that I showed, I have a server stack, and that all uses this type of, because it runs in an older version of Node. And so it uses requires and exports and all that. And then in my front end, I use imports like this. So, because parcel goes and fixes it up, my bundler. Okay, so let's go back here and let's just go ahead and remove that. So then you might ask, well, what about for like a default? And there's a way to do a default export as well. Let's just get that back into how we had it. Okay, and then we have app is a default export, right? So if we wanted to do a default here, it would be module.exports equals, and then you can have a name here and stuff. So we call this app. Okay, and then in index, I think that will still work just like we showed. Like it knows that that's the default. But we can also do the import like this: const app equals require app. Okay, so they essentially do the same thing. It's just two different ways. So this way that I'm showing you now is the older way, using the require function, and it looks different, right? This is setting it this way, and this other way is more of an import. And so, but nowadays with most of your stuff, you are just going to do it this way. You're going to import, and if you see the other way, you know how it works now. If you see this, you know that it's exporting stuff, but you can also do it this way. Okay? There's not much else to it. It can get tricky if you're doing weird mixing of the two and stuff, but essentially that's how it works. So, good. Okay, now let's talk about promises. So, promises are a little trickier. They're not too bad once you spend some time with them, but they are a little bit confusing, and especially when you're first starting and maybe you're coming from a different programming language where asynchronicity isn't like a core part of the language. Most programming languages don't have asynchronousness isn't a key feature of theirs. In JavaScript, it is. Like, that's what it was built on. A lot of JavaScript is asynchronous, and there's multiple reasons for that, but that's what we deal with. So there's this idea, years ago, there wasn't always an idea of a promise. There's various things that people would have to do with event listeners and things like that to get responses back when they're finished, and that's a fine and good way of doing things as well. But and callbacks, right? So lots of callbacks, just functions that get called when something finishes, things like that. Promises, just it started with a library. Somebody created a library, and they called it a promise, and then it got built into the main JavaScript. But a promise essentially is what, and when I promise you something, it means that at some point I'm going to carry out the thing I say, right? So we don't know when. If I say I promise I will buy you a candy bar in the future. If you get an A in this class, I promise you I'll buy you a candy bar. And so so you work hard or whatever, and in the meantime you're waiting for Brother Nelson to buy you a candy bar. Okay? When at the time that I hand you that candy bar, I am resolving the promise. I have no longer promised you to give you a candy bar because I have already given it to you and it's done, right? Now, let's say I totally forget and the semester's over, you got an A, and you're waiting for that candy bar, and Brother Nelson's out of money, and I can't buy a candy bar, and I say, I'm sorry, I can't buy a candy bar, or I forget, or something, or I buy a candy bar and I put it in the mail and it gets lost. Okay, in that case, the promise is rejected, right? So there's this idea of resolving and rejecting promises, right? It either you're going to get that candy bar or you're not going to, okay? And that's kind of all promises are. So the syntax for a promise, and let's just we're just going to hack in this chore list thing because why not? And we're just going to do a little let's see here. In order to do this, let's just use a let's see what I can do. Use not a callback. I think just a use effect. Okay, and again, this is just React. Don't worry about that so much. we're just going to try this and see what happens. So we're going to just do like an init function. No, let's do it like this. Const init equals function. No, how do we? Sorry, I'm gonna have to look this up real quick. It's been a while. I know we can do this, but oh yeah, okay, that's what we want to do. Okay, so we're just gonna call that, and it's gonna happen right away. That's what we want. And we just want this to happen like right when we start up the app. So, and this isn't taking callback. Okay, and this is where the promise is going to be. But just in order to get it to work, we're just going to test some stuff real quick. So let's also get a little state here. Let's just say quote set quote equals use state. Okay, and again, don't worry too much about this. This is just not important, but I just want to make sure this works. Use state. We need to import that. Okay. Okay, and then let's just set the quote to something. Set quote. I have to apologize. I use closure at work every day, and the syntax is very different. Instead of calling a function like this, you call it like this, and I just want to keep typing this all the time. Like, you know, and you call it like this. So if you take a closure class, you'll see that. But sorry, so that's why I'm kind of slow and yeah. Okay, so let's just set quote to I don't know, hello world, because I'm not creative tonight. Okay, so that happens. So that gets down there, and that works. So none of that's important. So, but what we want to do here is we want to do a promise, okay? And here's the syntax for promise. This is what I wanted to get to. It took a while. So a promise is an object. It's a class. So we create it like this with the new operator, okay? And a promise takes a callback, and the callback function that it takes has, it's not really a callback. It takes a function, and it kind of injects some things into it. So the function, the two parameters that it has are resolve and reject. Just like I said with the candy bar, you either can resolve the promise or we can reject it. Okay. When we resolve, this equals successfully delivered promised thing. Okay, whatever the promise was. A reject equals did not deliver. Okay. Brother Nelson promised me a candy bar. He didn't give it to me. Okay. And so those are functions as well. Okay. So let's just say function and function. Okay. So when we call resolve, let's just resolve it with something. We're going to resolve it with candy bar. Okay, so I'm sending that candy bar to you, not candy bar. candy bar. I'm sending that to you, okay? And so it's resolved. So then what do? Well, this promise returns this promise class returns an object that has a couple of functions, member functions, right? So it has a then, okay? That's what do you do after you it's resolved, or a catch, okay? What happens if it gets rejected? Okay, that's what those two things happen, okay? So we will, and you pass a function in each of these, okay? Now, what gets passed into this function? Okay, let's just create the function here, okay, and what gets passed into them? Okay, so this is where things get a little bit tricky, but whatever you pass to the resolve function gets passed here, okay? So this, we can call this result, okay? And this usually, and that's a normal way to name it, and this can be like error, okay? And then you can do things. You can like throw with that or whatever, right? So with the result, in this case, let's do set quote to the result, okay? And just for fun, we're going to set, let's just set error. We don't have that yet. What? Set error. We don't have this function yet, but we're going to just quickly make it. Okay, so we're just going to also have an error state. And a set error. Okay. Oh. And then down here, we'll just do something. Oops. Ah. Okay. So that way we can distinguish between the two. Okay. And what you see here is candy bar, okay? Because we're resolving the promise to be candy bar, okay? Now let's say that Brother Nelson is a terrible person. Well, no, let's do it this way. So, if your grade is greater than 90, then we're going to do candy bar. Else, and actually greater than 89, right? Then candy bar. Else, reject. You didn't get an A. Okay. Okay, and let's test it. So let's just say cons your grade equals 99. Okay, candy bar. Let's say your grade is 9. Hopefully nobody gets a 9. You didn't get an A. Okay, do you see how that works? I'm resolving. When I resolve, I go into this then function, and I'm setting that quote. Else, I'm going into this catch and setting that. Now, obviously, you can do all of this without a promise, and so you might be thinking like, well, what in the world? And that's a good point. You would probably never do this when you're working with synchronous data like this. You want, this really becomes powerful when you're working with asynchronous stuff where you don't know when it's going to be done and ready. Okay, so let's try this out. Okay, so we're going to do a little experiment, and we're going to, let's just say we want a random number. Okay, so between I don't know, one, okay, let's just math dot const r equals math dot random. Okay, and math dot random is going to give us a number between 0 and 1. Okay, that is fine, but it's not going to help us any. So let's 0 and 1, and let's multiply this by that 10,000. Okay, so that's going to give us a number, and let's just see what we have. So console log r. Okay, so that's giving us almost 3,900. Okay, now to demonstrate, this is something that we learned last week, right? We're going to do a set timeout. Okay, now set timeout, as you recall, it takes some sort of handler and then a number. Okay, now a set timeout doesn't happen right away. Okay, it can if we do a 0 there, but we're going to do just a random number of seconds between milliseconds between 0 and 10,000. Okay, so up to 10 seconds. Okay, and if we go into here, we can do console log r. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to wait some number of seconds. And this is going to be close to, yep, so 9 seconds. That waited 9 seconds, okay? And we saw that that didn't happen automatically right away, okay? Okay, that one was closer because it was less than a second, only 700 milliseconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so 9 seconds. So pretend like this is making like a call to an API somewhere or something, right? We're using fetch to grab something. It might take a while, right? Something might take some time. So now let's just change this and have it say resolve. Okay, so let's do a couple little things. So let's say if it was faster than 5 seconds. Okay, so if r is less than 5 seconds or 5,000 milliseconds, we're going to resolve thank you for being fast. Okay. Else, it's between 5 and 10 seconds. We're going to reject and say, you were too slow. Okay, now again, all this is asynchronous. It's not going to block. And we can show that by just down here, this is what we're going to do. We're going to say, we're going to set the quote to loading. Okay, so what do you think is going to happen here? Well, this is what's going to happen. It's going to set it to loading, and then it's going to wait for that promise to get resolved, and boom, you were too slow. So it must have been greater than 5 seconds, which it was, right? It took some time. Okay, so what this is happening is it doesn't go in and do any of this. It builds this promise and says, we're going to do this later. And then it goes on and sets this to loading, right? Even though all of this is before this loading, it doesn't do anything with the set quote or set error. When you do this, it just says loading, okay? And then after some amount of time, this resolves or rejects in this case, right? And so we can just keep going, and one of these we're going to get a good one. It's like 50% chance, right? We'll do one until we get the fast one. I mean, these are, wow, that's almost like 10. Come on. All of these will be slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I promise, one of these is going to be fast. Too slow. Come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Too slow. I'm refreshing. 1, 2, 3, 5. Do I have a bug? No, this. Maybe I have a bug. Let's just see what R is here. I don't think I mean, it just seems like too often to. Yeah, see, that's less than. And why is it going a bunch of times? You know, I think I feel like it's registering all these. But yeah, that should. It's going crazy, huh? I think that's probably a. Okay, let's do this. I honestly have no. Oh, I think I know why. I think so. What's happening is when we set this quote, it recalls this, and so this is always getting set to loading. And so let me see here. I think there's a way to only call this use effect once. That makes sense. So only call use effect once. Yeah. I think you pass it like false or something. Oh, yeah, an empty array. That's right. That's like the binding of things. That will help because it was running a bunch and then it was hitting. Okay. So we fixed that bug, I think. Okay, that one was too slow. Now, okay, that one was really fast. Thank you for being fast. We should see about 50-50, so this one would be too slow. This one should be fast, maybe. Or, yeah. Okay. Sorry, that's just a React thing, so you can ignore that. So again, the important stuff is just here, this new promise. Okay, I'll just add some space here because this is just plain old JavaScript. Okay, we're going through here and we're setting that quote to loading. Okay, so we see that first, even though all of this stuff happens seemingly first, but it doesn't. This is creating a new promise, and let's just look at that real quick. So I'm just going to call this P, and let's look at what this looks like. Okay, because this would be interesting. So if we do console log P, we're going to see something. Okay, we see pending. Okay, it's working. We don't know what it is yet. Okay. Now let's see what happens when we let's just see if this will work. If we do console log P here, I don't know if I think it will do what we want it to, but okay. Oh, well, not if we hit the catch. Okay, we want this to say fast. Okay, and it was still pending because it wasn't quite resolved yet. Now, this is a little bit tricky because when you look at this, you're going to see fulfilled. Let's see if I can get good. So that doesn't really happen. But let's just see if we can get a good look at what's happening here. So when I click on that, it's pending, 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 and I think this will update. You were too slow. Oh, nope, it didn't update. But the funny thing is, if I wait and open it, it's going to say fulfilled. So this is just how it works. That's how Chrome handles it. But that's what it is. You're getting back an object, a class object, that essentially has a state that says pending or fulfilled. And at that point, when we hit here, it's pending. And that's why we're going to hit this and say loading. And then in the future, some point between 0, not 0, but 1 and 10 seconds, we're going to resolve that promise. And we're going to either set the quote or set the error. And that's kind of the basics of promises. And obviously you can think of much more cooler ways of doing this. It can be fetching objects or whatever. Another thing is you can chain these too. So you can do then if you, and this gets a little bit more fun, but like result 2. And that will, the result 2 will be whatever I return from here. So return let's just say result. I'm just going to use a string template here and do result. No error. I don't know, something like that. And then here we'll do set error to the result 2. Okay, and you can chain these forever, and you can pass this around. You can pass this promise around and add thens and queue up things. Okay, and so in this, it hit this one. And it said, thank you for being fast, and set it to that, because that's what this is. And then it returned, thank you for being fast, dash, no error. And it got picked up by this then, and then it added that to set the error to that. You can also chain catches. Now, let's say that I want to redirect from a then to an error. Okay, and this is where we get a little bit tricky. you could just essentially if you throw an error in here, or yeah, just throw new error. Okay. So this if it's fast, it should set thank you for being fast, and you're slow because it's going to throw an error here. If we can get that going. Okay, that one was too slow. Oops. I thought that should work. Anyway, there's a way to do that, and that's useful if you do some validation, like if this, then that, then you can redirect into that catch statement. You also have things like finally and things like that you can do. So it definitely helps with like handling some orchestration in your apps and stuff. Asynchronous orchestration. So anyway, that's all I'm going to go into it. There's a lot more you can read about and mess with and do with promises, but that's I think that's a good starting point with just the basics. So thanks for watching. I'll talk to you next time.